Okay, so now we're going to go through our very basic runner's mobility routine. And what we're starting with is just a bit of a shakeout and some simple movements just to kind of loosen up the spine. As you can see, I'm going limp. Looks a little bit wacky, but look, it is what it is, you know. Then the next and the first movement we're going through is just some kind of pull-ups with the knee. I'll describe this exercise as a hip flexor high knee pull. So essentially you're standing tall on the leg that's on the ground, so trying to lock that knee as straight as possible. You'll see my leg wanting to bend and I'm trying to straighten it. Feel my glute squeeze and just trying to stand as tall as possible. This one's really good for stretching out the hamstrings and getting the muscles primed for running. Now if you can see, I'm kind of like pulling my toes towards my shins as well. And that's a really key component of this movement. I suggest you just follow along with me, aiming to get the leg as straight as possible and pull the knee up as high as you can, just to get a nice stretch through the hip flexor and hamstring complex. So I'm trying to straighten out, really allowing my butt to tuck under and just getting myself into a tall position. Imagine like you're a runner, an elite runner, you're going for distance, and so it's really helping to stretch out the legs. Next, we're going to do just one set of peel downs, so just to get the spine moving. I'm slowly peeling down with my upper body going towards the toes and then coming back up. This is just going to help facilitate the movement that we're going to open up throughout the routine. So really taking my time with these. As we described in past cues, you're drawing the midsection in, drawing the belly button in, squeezing the quads as you go down, imagining like a piece of tape is peeling off the wall and it's coming off segment by segment, bit by bit as we go down. So just perform the exact number of repetitions that I perform. If you would like to do extra, that's fine. I typically like to do sets of 4 or more. So we're going down all the way as far as we can, feel comfortable, and then we're coming back up. And when we come up to the top, notice how I extend and try to straighten up as much as possible. So now I'm just going to do some brief shoulder movements. These are the Egyptians, just to allow my spine to move and articulate a bit more. It's more for a spinal than a shoulder movement. Now I'm just going to go through some brief cars. So here I'm doing my neck cars just to free up the upper body nicely so that when I do run, I don't have any tension in my shoulders and upper back. Now, I actually just went for a run before I filmed this routine, so it's a really good routine, not only for before a run, but after a run, and it's going to give you the mobility that you need to run better and run faster because the hips are the thing that regulates most of our running mobility. And so what we're doing is trying to actively strengthen our hip flexion while opening up the glutes and hamstrings just to allow our lower body to more freely get into the positions that it needs to while running. And it should help loosen you up and release a lot of the tension that you tend to experience going into a run. So it's a great routine, and like with all of these routines, they provide mobility that lasts. So it's not just mobility that you're going to have transiently, like a lot of stretching does. So now I'm just doing some spinal waves just to free up the spine, nothing too extensive, just a couple of sets. I'm walking over to grab a foam pad. So, just do a bit of movement in between your sets. Grab this foam pad and we're going down into a half kneeling hip flexor stretch. So that's knee down on the ground, arm up overhead if you choose to. If you feel a stretch in this position, you don't need to go the arm up overhead. And then you're just going to squeeze the glute of the back leg. And notice how I'm not quite leaning into it. I'm trying to get the stretch. My knee is directly under my hip, and I'm trying to actually get the stretch by tucking my pelvis under by actively tensing my abdominals and squeezing the glute of the back leg. Now, if you've seen this cued before, I'm going to try to drive the knee forwards. You can't actually see me moving because I'm performing an isometric contraction, and then I'm going to try to drive the knee backwards. And those are both for 10 seconds each. If you've not been cued on that before, it will be very confusing, so don't worry about that. Just try to get a stretch through the front of your hip. Next exercise is just some eccentric reverse hamstring curls. So it is a essentially like going up onto our knees and then falling back while trying to control it. You'll get a nice work through the quads, and it's going to help to stretch out the front of the legs. If you can't quite do it like that, then just sit in the Caesar position, which is the position where you're like this, back on your hands and feet. Sorry, back on your feet, sitting with your butt on your heels, and relax into that. Okay, we're going to have a little break in the routine here. So I didn't have a chance to film the full 2 minutes, but here you can see me holding the 90-90 position for 2 minutes. And then what I'm doing is actively contracting through my hips. If you've been cued on this before, you know what to do, but I'm actively contracting, pushing down for 10 seconds, and then going up for 10 seconds through the hip joint, which actually manifests at you pushing through the ankle, so down and then back up. If you've done the 90-90 stretch, and chances are if you're in the community and watching these, you know what I'm talking about, then just perform it like that. If not, don't worry too much about actively contracting or anything like that. Just hold this 90-90 position for the full 2 minutes. And I want you to do 10 seconds in each direction, so pushing down and pushing up on both sides. So we'll let the video play for that, and we'll play you some nice, soothing piano music during that. so now I have finished the routine of the 90-90, and what I'm going to do is just go through some hip openers. So I'm going to transition back to our old video now, but as you can see, I'm just kind of transitioning through the 90-90 on each side, trying to rotate as much as I can through my torso as well as the hips, just really trying to bias that internal rotation. So I'm going to continue with that and just follow along. So I'm opening up through the hips, twisting all the way through, and then coming back, making sure that I get as much movement through my hips as I can, just to really allow the most movement possible. And so come through, other side. Really good twisting. It's exactly what we're after. And opening up, come through, and then we're going to finish up. Now what we're going to go into is a glute bridge, just a basic glute bridge, and we're bridging up to 10 reps, just really paying attention to keeping the ribs down, the heels directly under the knees, and squeezing the glutes at the top. So notice how it's a straight line from my rib cage through my knees. That is what you want to aim for, just to minimize any excess compression on the lower back and tension there. So we're doing 10 of these just to open up the glutes. I'd recommend doing 3 sets of these. I only demonstrate one, but it's a really good one to open up. So what I would do is, once you move on to this next exercise, the hip car, I would do another set of the glute bridges after your hip cars. So go through the hip car. If you don't end up doing that, that is okay. It's just quite good to do 2 or 3 sets just to really open things up. And that's if you feel like you need the extra mobility through the hips. I didn't think I needed it this time, and I wanted to provide a concise routine. But if you want to add some more intensity, you can also do the hip activations. So that's with a glute band as well. So what I'm doing there is our hip cars, 4 each side. I do a little cat and camel in between just to mobilize a bit more. So extending, turning all the way around and through, and then back up. Full rotation, pushing through my hands, keeping the torso stable, just aiming to go through the biggest range of motion as I can through my hips. Now, if you've been cued on this before, you'll know what I'm talking about. A lot of people will cheat it. Now I'm just going through basic rotation just to really solidify that range and bring my thoracic into things. So now I'm jumping up, coming back onto my toes, coming up, and I'm going to go through a position known as the founder position. So I'm hinging back into my deadlift, arms reaching up overhead, and I'm just going to hold this position, really sitting back into my butt and holding that for approximately 10 seconds if you want to raise the intensity, 10 breaths, and then I'm going to go 10 seconds each side of these hip flexor releases. So arms up to the ceiling, straighten that back leg, sinking in, and this is also known as a warrior position. So we're really balancing in, trying to relax as much as we can, and then go through the opposing side, 10 seconds. Try to pay attention to your breathing, control that, staying up, and then reaching up overhead if you want to raise the intensity and twisting away. And that is our entire mobility routine designed for runners. This is a great routine for anyone who has tight hips, but specifically designed for your runners. Sorry, to finish off, we want to do this inchworm peel down once again. So yeah, for runners, and I hope you enjoyed it.